Let's go get him. Let's go get him today, man. Let's go. Hey, dominate on 3. 1, 2, 3. Dominate.
What's up, everyone? You know, I gotta be back here. I told you guys 30 minutes, and I'm back. 2:15, I dropped my Deshaun Watson video on how it impacts Jimmy Garoppolo. I gave you a quick debrief, short and simple. It does by the fact that it's going to delay Garoppolo because guess what? People that aren't interested in, or people that don't end up getting Deshaun Watson, they're going to want Jimmy Garoppolo because they're going to be panicking. So that's really the only way. But if you want a full in-depth analysis, be sure to watch that video. I'll drop it in the description, but it was my last one. But everyone, thank you guys for tuning in. I'm very excited to be here because guess what? We're going to be talking Chandler Jones to the 49ers. But real quick, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe to the channel, and make sure you follow my podcast, 49ers Red Zone Pod. You know, it's me and Marco. Both of us, we're going to be talking shop at 6:30 tonight. We're going to be talking about all things 49ers related, Jimmy Garoppolo, the draft, and everything. So be sure to be tuned in. But guess what, guys? There is some big news because Chandler Jones could potentially be coming to the 49ers. And what do I mean by that? I mean, Chandler Jones recently came out and he said on the NFL Players podcast with his teammate or former teammate with the New England Patriots, Logan Ryan, that he prefers scheme fit as his number one preference in free agency, not the money. So how does that relate to the 49ers? Well, guess what? The 49ers have been one of the best teams over the last 3 seasons in rushing the passer. In 2 of the last 3 seasons, they've ended up top 3 in sack percentage in 2019 and 2021. And in those same years, they've also ended up top 5 in number of sacks overall. So guess what? The 49ers, they're a great pass rushing team. They run a 4-3. So let me explain to you guys exactly why Chandler Jones could be a great fit for this team, but also if it is realistic. So let's get straight into it. Talking about the 49ers and Chandler Jones. Chandler Jones is coming out of a 3-4 system where he played outside linebacker with the Arizona Cardinals, but also rushed the passer. I think personally that Chandler Jones is very primed for a 4-3 fit, which is what the 49ers run on defense. And here's why. He's 6'4", 265 pounds with the quickness to move past guards, but also the strength to play interior defensive lineman like he did in New England. And I think that he would be a seamless fit with Chris Kocurek. Why? Because he loves moving edges to the inside to operate on guards using their quickness and speed. That's how Arden Key got 8 sacks last year, and that's how we had so much versatility and so much rotation with our defensive line. It's because a lot of players had inside-outside versatility, as I like to call it. So Chandler Jones definitely could be a great fit. And reading from a quote of what Chandler Jones exactly said, he said earlier this week, "It's not about money at all. Where I am in my career, I've gotten contracts, I've gotten a Super Bowl, but scheme is huge for me. It's winning championships." I'll say it again. It's not about money. I will say I want to go to a place that maximizes my talents. When it comes to my decision, where does Chandler Jones become Chandler Jones? Where does he maximize his talent? And guess what? What have the 49ers done with so many players in the last 3 years, especially even just this season? When you look at it, guys like Arden Key, Jordan Willis, Charles Omenihu, and Samson Ebukam all developed into somewhat of a solid pass rusher for the 49ers this past season. He had 8 sacks. Samson Ebukam had a very solid second half of the year. And Charles Omenihu was traded for just a 6th-round pick. And guess what? Charles Omenihu came on and he was a solid contributor in both run defense and pass defense situations. And then Jordan Willis, who knows about the improbable field goal block against the Green Bay Packers? But he's not only a good special teamer, he's a very solid defender as well, rushing against the edge. We also got him for very cheap from the Miami Dolphins. We had these reclamation projects, but imagine we didn't even need to have a reclamation project. Imagine on the defensive line, we could have a guy like Chandler Jones, who's already proven as a pass rusher. He's got 10 sacks in 7 of his career seasons in the NFL, 10 plus. And Chandler Jones, he was one of the most prominent guys, not only in pass rushing, but in creating turnovers. He is the most, in terms of forced fumbles, He has the most of any active player. And what do the 49ers really need? They need playmakers on that defensive line. They need playmakers not only on the defensive line, but in their defense overall. And if you have a guy who has the ability of Josh Norman in terms of forcing fumbles, but is actually a good player in Chandler Jones, guess what? You take that. And I think that Chandler Jones would be a great fit for the 49ers. But let's talk about realism. Salary cap. The 49ers currently, looking at their salary cap, they are about $6 to $10 million over. It's going to increase today because guess what? They just signed back. I forget who it was. I think, Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, the linebacker. They just signed him back. He's a special teams ace. He also plays linebacker. It was on a one-year, $1.035 million deal. So they're now around $10 million over the cap. Now, the 49ers are doing all this with the expectation that Jimmy Garoppolo will get moved by the end of this week via a trade likely, because that is going to free up $25.5 million in cap space, putting them under the necessary salary cap ahead of the league year, which starts on March 16th. Now, I did talk about the Deshaun Watson news and how it'll affect for those who just coming in. Make sure you go tune to my last video. I got that one out right as the Deshaun Watson news came out. Make sure you watch it and how it actually involves Jimmy Garoppolo and how Jimmy Garoppolo's market could potentially change should Deshaun Watson's trade be announced over the next few days. But looking specifically at Chandler Jones, guess what? The 49ers are currently $10 million over the cap. I'll explain to you exactly how the 49ers can clear up cap in an effort to sign Chandler Jones. First is trading Jimmy Garoppolo. That clears up $25.5 million in salary cap. Then there are a couple of players who are deserving of extensions on this trade or on this team. And those are, guess what? We've got Samson Ebukam, who is currently slated to make $8.25 million this year, but that might be a little too expensive for the 49ers if they want to acquire a guy of Chandler Jones's talent. Extending Samson Ebukam saves the 49ers cap space around around close to $3 to $4 million. And that would be very beneficial for the 49ers because you need all the money you can get, especially when going after a guy like Chandler Jones. Other potential candidates for extensions are Emmanuel Mosley, who currently has a cap hit of $6.26 million. Lowering his cap hit to 3.78 via an extension would save $2.77 million in 2022 cap space, which would be extremely beneficial for the 49ers when looking to assign a guy like Chandler Jones as well. In addition, when you can extend Jimmy Ward, whose cap hit is currently $12.94 million, you decrease it by about $6 million via an extension for his 2022 number. And guess what? You free up about $13 million via those 3 extensions, and that's increasing your cap space. Other moves that the 49ers could potentially make, the likeliest is restructuring Arik Armstead's contract, who's currently making $20 million this year, the highest cap hit alongside Jimmy Garoppolo on this team currently. You restructure him, take about $10 million of that and put it into a signing bonus. You save $9.85 million, have his cap hit be $10.15 for 2022, and that is an extreme amount of money that you're saving going into the offseason. Another player, although very unlikely in my opinion, is George Kittle, who currently holds a cap hit of $16.01 million. You could lower his cap hit to about 8.13 via an extension, saving $8 million. But I think because George Kittle's contract is already expensive enough as it is through its tail end of his deal, I don't think they do any moves regarding George Kittle. But a potential cut candidate, a post-1 June cut candidate is D Ford. I think if you move on from D Ford, you get $2 million. It's up to the 49ers whether they think he can be a contributor next year because it is only $2 million. But looking at all of these moves, the 49ers can clear up as much as $58.28 million in 2022. That means alongside how much you're already owed, which is $10 million, you have about $48 to $50 million in cap space. But being more realistic, you likely have about $40 million in cap space to address free agency. That's where Chandler Jones comes in. Chandler Jones did say his preference is scheme fit, not money, and the 49ers are a great scheme fit. The only issue with that is there are a lot of other teams who are contenders who could be potential scheme fits for Chandler Jones as well. Some to name are the Buffalo Bills, the Miami Dolphins, and more. There are a couple of teams per Jordan Schultz who are already interested in Chandler Jones's services, which is why it might make it a little difficult to acquire a guy of Jones's talent because the Philadelphia Eagles, Seattle Seahawks, Atlanta Falcons, and Denver Broncos are all also interested in Chandler Jones. You could see him end up in Denver because alongside that really, really stout division, you have a good amount of pass rushers, and Chandler Jones might like to get his hands on a guy like Patrick Mahomes, because you want to play up against the best and you want to fit in a scheme Denver is a good scheme fit for him as well. But if San Francisco wants to go after Chandler Jones, a potential contract could look like $13 to $16 million per season. A 2-year deal is likely. It's not going to be a 1-year deal because the 49ers are likely going to have it be a backloaded contract where they don't have to take on as much cap this year, but next year. It could also be a 3-year deal. Chandler Jones is already 32, but for or salary cap purposes, to diminish the hit this year, they could spread the cap hit over 2 years in 2023 and 2024. Have a guy like Chandler Jones for the next 3 years on a fairly solid contract. A contract could look like 2 years, $32 million, similar to what his teammate in Arizona last year, J.J. Watt, got on the open market. Now, talking about realistic, how realistic it is for the 49ers to acquire a guy like Chandler Jones this offseason, I don't think it's necessarily realistic because the 49ers are going to look to address depth. Last offseason, that's what they did at multiple key positions, especially defensive line, and they carried 11 defensive linemen who all played a fairly solid role apart from defensive lineman Zach Kerr. They had 10 defensive linemen playing a fairly solid role in that 49ers rotation, and having a guy like Chandler Jones kind of skews away from that type of scheme because you're going to be focusing and you're going to be fixating your energy towards 2 key players rather than rotating in and keeping everyone well preserved. And if you're paying a guy like Chandler Jones $16 million, you're not going to want him to be off the field for a certain amount of plays. In 2019, the 49ers, they went with Dee Ford and Nick Bosa alongside Arik Armstead and DeForest Buckner, a very stacked defensive line, but we saw that they tired out as the season progressed, especially in that Super Bowl in that second half. Rotation kind of eliminates that kind of concern, although it is of lesser talent. So there's certainly a balance that the 49ers might need to find. Cap space wise, they can definitely do the deal, but Chandler Jones may prove to be too expensive. If he reaches past that $16 million range, which could definitely happen given the amount of suitors that he currently has, Chandler Jones might just be out of the 49ers' price range, and that might just be too costly for the 49ers to even go and show interest in. Currently, it isn't reported that they've shown interest, but he would be a solid fit. Depends on if Jones wants the 49ers as one of his destinations, because they'd likely have to be at the top of Jones's list for them to be even considered in the mix. So looking at it, is there a potential for Chandler Jones to be a 49er? Yes, but is it extremely likely? I wouldn't say so, just because this class is a very deep edge class in the draft. The 49ers are in a prime position to select an edge rusher at pick 61. They could get a better pick with the Jimmy Garoppolo trade, potentially with the Colts, where they could get pick 42. So they're in a prime position to select edge in the class, in a very deep edge class. They also prefer depth, which may not be possible with a guy like Chandler Jones, because you're spending $16 million where you could potentially spend that towards an Arden Key and 2 other efficient pass rushers to solidify your entire group heading into 2022. But if the 49ers have realized, guess what, it's time to go big or go home, I'm not opposed to Chandler Jones. He's been a very solid player, not only in creating turnovers and as a pass rusher, but he's also been a solid veteran over the last couple of years. And this group could use some seasoning in terms of leadership, especially with a guy like DJ Jones, who's been on this team for a couple of years, potentially leaving in free agency. So those are my thoughts on Chandler Jones. I did a poll earlier today, and a lot of people were torn whether to pick Chandler Jones or J.C. Jackson for a variety of reasons, including price, age, and things like that. Let me know what you guys think. Should the 49ers pick up Chandler Jones in free agency? Drop that down in the chat below. Thank you guys so much for watching. That's just my thoughts. And make sure you read the article for a more in-depth analysis on how Chandler Jones to the 49ers makes sense and if it actually is realistic. But thank you guys. It's been a great day. Hopefully some more news comes by. I'll see you guys later. Peace.